Thank you for being in this space, the Chiropractic Universe by Dr. David Serio. We are very grateful that you are here.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another chapter of the Chiropractic Universe. Today is in English, and I'm so excited. Today we have a great friend of mine, Superwoman, Dr. Lona Cook. She is a mother of two beautiful children, a wife, a chiropractor. She has several chiropractors working with her. She's a mentor. She wrote 4 books now. Is that correct? 4 books?
Something like that. Yep.
Well, if she didn't write 4, there's a 4th one in the way, or a 5th. And she's politically involved in chiropractic in Wisconsin. So without further ado, I present you Dr. Lona Cook. Thank you so much for your time and for being here.
Thanks for having me, Dr. David.
It's a pleasure. So I would love for you to tell everyone watching. And first of all, I want to thank everyone that's watching, sharing my videos, commenting, sending questions. If you love what you're seeing, feel free to share this with other chiropractors. So I love Lona's story about how she got into chiropractic. We all have a different, unique story. Hers is very unique in that she was able to receive chiropractic from a young age. So I would kind of like you to share that story a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess I never asked the question as to like, how did I find chiropractic? Because it was so natural to me that I thought everybody already utilized chiropractic, much like dentistry. I didn't realize how lucky I was that my family knew about chiropractic and utilized it to the point when I was born, I was colicky. And my dad's family had utilized chiropractic for generations already, which I'll explain in a minute. And so he convinced my mom that, you know, because I wasn't sleeping and they weren't sleeping, that I needed to be checked by a chiropractor. And so I had my first adjustment somewhere in the first few months of life. And then, like I said, I didn't know that people didn't know about chiropractic. So fast forward, I went to chiropractic school and, you know, I went to Northwestern University in Minnesota. And on the first day, the dean or the chancellor said, this is a tough profession because you're always having to tell people why they have to come back. And I literally remember pausing in my thinking at the time and thinking, did he just misspeak? I didn't understand the concept of why that was difficult. I really thought he misspoke. And so I think that served me well, that it was already natural to me that like people would understand chiropractic. It's not a difficult concept. And that families needed to know, you know, what I guess my family already knew.
Wow. Hold on. I want to ask you a couple of things here because there's so much in there. But first of all, you said my dad's family used chiropractic for generations. So, I mean, that's just incredible because you grew up in Wisconsin, correct? Right? Yeah. So, okay. So you had access, or your family had access to, was it Gonstead chiropractors or people that went to Palmer? How is that possible? You know, I mean, chiropractic's only been around since 1895. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. So again, I didn't know this until later on, but maybe I was like 3 years in practice, and my grandfather, who was a veterinarian, so my dad's dad, he was like, I'll say he was a hard ass. So he was like a very like tough guy, but everybody loved him. He was kind of larger than life. And so he called me out of the blue, which never happened. And he said, I got a story for you. And so I was like, okay, I'm listening, because he normally didn't do that. And so he goes, yeah, your dad said you'd like to hear this. And so he was 15 at the time in the story. And he said that he was in southern Wisconsin. So my granddad grew up around Milwaukee. And when he was young, he was like 7, I think, maybe even younger, his dad passed away and they had lived on a farm. And so his mom, trying to make ends meet because she had 3 kids, moved into the city and put the boys in a boarding home. So they didn't live with any parents when they were young. And so anyways, fast forward, he's 15 years old. He's in a car accident. And it's in the winter, going, you know, in the country roads. They slide off the road and they hit this tree. And my grandfather goes through the front window. And I guess the story he says is that when whoever came like up to the wreck, and there was one of the people in the car passed away, actually, they said, who knows any of these kids? And someone said, oh, that kid lives in the boarding home. He doesn't have any money. And they said, does anyone in town know him? And they said, yeah, the chiropractor knows him. And so I guess my grandfather's mom had taken them to the chiropractor when they were sick, when she used to live with them, because she didn't have money for the medical doctor and knew that they did better if she'd bring them in for an adjustment. So they took my grandfather at the time to the chiropractor. He was unconscious, and he stayed in the chiropractor's office unconscious for 3 days. And this guy adjusted him during that. And he woke up on the third day and left. And he said, and I was fine. And I literally, he told me this story and I was like, like my mind just blew up, because I'm like, that's the craziest chiropractic story. And why did it take you this long to tell me that?
That is, you know, Lona, that is just incredible, because there's been something lost. Don't you feel like in our generation, kind of, there's been something lost in the power of innate and the adjustment and what the body could actually do to heal itself. You know, that's just that. Lona, I had a teacher in chiropractic school, and her named Dobson. Her and her ex-husband were teachers in New Zealand school, so they were taught in Sherman. So my first day of class with her, she was teaching X-ray, and she puts up an X-ray, Lona, of a C2 that's completely broken in like 20 pieces, and she's like, that was me. I got in a car accident and was paralyzed. And my chiropractor was an upper cervical Palmer disciple and adjusted me. And within like 3 weeks, I regained all of my abilities to walk, and I wasn't paralyzed. And her C2 actually healed back, you know? And I mean, how many times do we miss the power of that because we're scared or we don't understand really what chiropractic can do on such a big level? No?
Totally. I know. And when you hear those stories too, it's like, yeah, it just reminds you the like amount of like conviction, faith, whatever you want to call it, that is possible, first of all, in this like thing that we do. And then where do you measure up? Right. Like, I heard a story a couple of weeks ago it was so beautiful. It was, I can't tell it like he told it, but the chiropractor that told me, so it was like he's been in practice 30 years. And this was like in his first 4 years of practice. And then he had a client come in who, the boy was maybe like 8 at the time. He was nonverbal and super violent. So he had to have, like 2 aides with him at all time to like, in case he indicated that he was going to like attack or whatever, then they would like put him in like a chokehold and put him to the ground. And so this kid had never spoken, had tons of labels. Right. And for whatever reason, the mom had made the decision to bring him into this, Dr. Krantz. And so he knew that like, I'm not going to be able to do my normal like as exam and assessment and stuff, because this kid's not going to let me touch him. I basically get to like assess his atlas and then deliver if possible. And so he's like, I had to like measure my own fear, because she told me like, he could bite your finger off, you know, like, and it's like, can you imagine if you're told this, then also like having the like, I guess, love for this person that you still want to like check them. So anyways, he ends up checking him, just adjusts his atlas, and the boy looks at him, which normally the eye contact was like a violent thing, looks at him and says this first word, good. Yeah. And like, that just like, when he told this story, and he's an adult and has been a patient for like 20 years. And he has like 12 words. He's no longer violent. Like, it's just like total transformation. Right. And it's like, oh, we need to hear those stories. And
I still get emotional when I hear those, you know, it's like, wow. You know, Tom Gilardi, one of my mentors, the founder of Sherman College, told me this story one day. And he said, not many people know this. I'm going to tell you a story. Lyle Sherman, his mentor, was having a heart attack. And the wife called Tom Gilardi and said, he's not going to the hospital. He said, get over here and check his spine. while he's about to have a heart attack. And
Mhm.
Tom went over, checked him and adjusted him, and then everything calmed down. And like, it's like I love that word used, conviction, because, you know, it's like, I feel like sometimes I have to check myself a lot. Like, what is my level of conviction sometimes? Especially, you know, learning from who I consider one of my greatest mentors in philosophy, but Reggie Gold, where we kind of like, it's almost like, I like to say, a little bit drier, you know, it's like chiropractic's good for you. You know, subluxation is always bad, correcting it is always good, but in there, we miss sometimes all these colors of like the conviction and these stories that we're listening to. Do you feel like that sometimes, or?
Yeah, I mean, it can become, yeah, something that you know, but maybe you haven't experientially witnessed like the radicalness of chiropractic sometimes.
That's a great word. That's a great word. I love that. Lona, one time at Sherman, we had the assembly, and this guy was like, I don't know, he must have been like 85. And he comes out and he rips off his shirt and he starts doing like push-ups on his hands, but with his feet up. And he does like 100 of them. And he's like, chiropractic from BJ Palmer since I was a baby. He's like, let's see you guys do that. And he challenged all the students and no one could do it. And he's like, this is like the power of chiropractic since I was born. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, okay, want to change the tone a little bit here. And so, you know, I practice in South America, and where insurance doesn't exist. Europe, insurance doesn't exist for chiropractic. So it's just basically, it's all cash, not even a question. So, you know, I have my own thinking on that. How do we get people to pay for their care, and what do we have to do for that? But I would like your opinion, because for me, Lona practices, how much cash is your practice? Is like 100%, 95%?
Yeah, no, around like 88 to 90%.
Okay, so that's huge for the States. That's a huge maximum respect for that, because I'm sure tons of people call you and say, you know, do you take my insurance? So I'm listening. I'm from the United States. Kind of share with us, if I'm heavily insurance, I want to move more towards cash. Can you tell us a couple of the steps? What's the mindset? And how do you kind of do that?
Sure. Yeah. So for me, it has been an evolution. You know, I took more insurance when I began, and it's just been a process of weaning it out. And I think probably one of the biggest differences, and this is part of what's changing across the board anyways, but is that you still have to have the conversation. So at least in my experience, the willingness to try and explain, almost like we're explaining everything else to help people understand. There's just one extra step here in the United States where it's like, this person may think they have some sort of benefit, or they don't understand why they would be paying cash when they potentially have insurance. So there's like an extra step in there of half the time they don't even have benefits anyways. They just need someone to explain like, hey, you actually have an $11,000 deductible. And what that means is, you know, you have to move in here. We're going to put your queen size bed in the back, and then you would hit, you know, your $11,000 deductible. So it's almost like I sort of make a joke about it. And most people, I think this is what's culturally changing, is that almost everyone knows that their insurance is crap. So it's gotten easier and easier, I would say, to have the conversation that we're going to cut out the middleman. And that was part of
question. Sorry, but I have a question about this. So is that something that is done in your practice? So if I call, you're not explaining that on the phone to me. You're getting me in the practice and then explaining once I'm physically there. Is that right?
Generally speaking, yes.
Okay.
So like, again, more and more people, like probably 75% of people are coming right from the get-go knowing like, and like 10 years ago, it wasn't that many, at least in Wisconsin, are coming knowing like, I'm going to pay cash. I don't have good insurance, or I don't have benefits or whatever. But the other 25%, they may say like, oh, I don't know, I might have coverage, you know? And so usually we're going to have that conversation once they're in the door, because I don't want my staff having to check benefits for people and spend time when we don't know if they're for sure going to come in, because that's just time that they'd have to spend. But I have found that it just going the extra length of having the conversation, most of those people will understand why they're going to pay cash anyways. Also, they've seen your like 4 walls, they get the vibe. They're like, oh, even if my insurance would pay somewhere else, maybe I want to be here. So, it's just a little different from that end of the world. I would say for people that are wanting to get out is do it strategically. So each state is different. I realize that. And obviously we've got Medicare, which is a whole nother like conversation.
Yeah, we don't even get into that.
Yeah, right. So I'd say like, is just like when I started looking at which insurances for sure, like handcuff me, do I not want to be part of? And those would be the first to go. And then I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is why have we gotten away from like chiropractic being chiropractic, is because many of us have played in this insurance game where it's everything but, and so to start to rip those Band-Aids off feels really good.
Wow. So couple things I want to ask you in regards to that. And I'll share a couple of my thoughts on that. What would you say are like 3 major things? So someone's going to pay out of their pocket, right? And for our care, what are 3 major things that we have to think about as chiropractors so that they see the value in what we're doing? 3 points that you would suggest to anyone listening to this, no matter where they're practicing.
Well, I think we think that it's a lot of what we say. And I think a lot more is initially anyways, it's like, how do they feel? What's their experience? Did they feel like you listened to them? Is there rapport there? That I think is huge for people wanting to like put their money someplace, and trust that you're going to lead them through a process. So much of it in the beginning is like more of an experiential thing, I think, than it is like what you said or didn't say.
Goes back to that phrase. I forget who said this, but people won't remember what you say. They're going to remember how you make them feel.
Right.
Totally. Love it.
And that is an energy, so I think it's the container you've created to bring people into, people can feel it. So like if you're bringing people in your practice, but then the experience doesn't match what they think they were going to get, it's like, well, they're probably not going to exchange dollars with you then, because it's not what they thought they were getting. And so I think just congruency, when you keep looking at like, what is my brand? What am I selling? What am I doing here? And why are we doing it? Then does that like trickle out, so that those that are, coming in for it are like, oh, this is what I thought I was going to walk into.
Beautiful.
So that's a second part. And I think a third part is just clarity over like what you do, what you don't do, like what is your product and what are you selling, so that it's not confusing to the consumer.
I totally agree. I agree about that. It's like our energy first, the energy of our practice, that immaterial part, right? The immaterial part that you can't measure. And I agree on that. Giving them the context so that they can choose, okay, this is what I'm looking for. This is not what I'm looking for. Perfect. And don't you think, Lona, as time goes on, so that's like the beginning step, but then as time goes on, it's like there's a phrase in sports, you're only as good as your last game, right? So you could be the best athlete in the world. All of a sudden you start playing bad and people are like, ciao, bye-bye. So it's like, a couple points, can you add to this a couple points over time? So now I'm coming into you for 3 years. So how do you constantly keep people in wanting to continue adding value? Yeah.
And I would love your thoughts on this too.
Okay.
We talk about this a lot actually, because I part of how we operate is I'm not a big, like, you have to do things my way. Like that doesn't work well for me because I wouldn't like that. So I'm going to assume that whoever's showing up in the office is meant to be in the office. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be with me in 10 years. They may not be with me in 2 months. I'm not sure. I can do only what I can do, which is like figure out how to communicate better, you know, make sure everything in this, like what we were just talking about, the like energy of the place and the way that we're educating is in alignment with, you know, what I know to be true and what I would want to receive. And therefore there's congruency there. So when we were talking about this, as our team talks about this a lot, is the evolution that the practice member may be in. Again, we're going to have some people who are like going down the rabbit hole with us. Like they're receiving chiropractic, they go deeper and deeper, they're going to keep evolving. Then other things are changing in their world. And like, they want to learn more. They want to, you know, this inside out approach to life is like really speaking to them. That's awesome. And like, they may be practice members and bring all sorts of people in because this is like the best thing since sliced bread. Right. And those are usually people that are super fun for us to work with. And also there's the people that maybe aren't that fun to work with, that always want to talk to you about like a symptom over and over again. It seems like nothing's changing in their world, and yet they're still here. Right. And so I think the longer that I'm in practice, the more I like have less judgment on like that person and also myself. Like, did I fail them? Did they do it wrong? Or the person that doesn't make it to their first like reassessment or their reeval. It's like, did we do something wrong? Did we, you know, and it's like, maybe, or maybe it's just, you know, they'll be back. And so I think, again, that's where when we're thinking about like energetic containers, like we get all tripped up on like trying to manipulate other people and what they choose and what they don't choose and da 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 da. And really like our end of the bargain is to give amazing care, to try and figure out ways to help more people understand this thing called chiropractic that we're all deepening our understanding on the longer that we're in it. And then serve it in a way where more people can access it. And so I think the people that are showing up on your table for years and years and years are growing with you, you know?
Yeah. I look at it kind of the same way. It's like, if we're in a practice and we're thinking lifetime care, we always have to figure out different ways to add value. That's kind of like my mantra. How can I add value to these people, to anyone that's my client on a constant basis? So for my part, I'm the same way. I became much less judgmental of myself and of people, whether they understand it or not. What I am doing is the best I can to constantly add value and make my message clear, more deep, and in different. One of the things one of my mentors, Lona, Roberto Monaco, who's my mentor in communications, taught me is really powerful. Think about on Instagram, right? We have like 30 different filters. I could take a picture of you right now, and that picture, I could put 30 different filters and you look different in every one, right? And some people are going to connect with the original one, and others are going to connect with the one that's 30 filters down. So what he taught me, and this is very powerful, is you got to find 30 million different ways to kind of say the same thing, and it's going to connect with different people through different filters, you know? And I think as long as we can go to bed at night knowing that we're doing that constantly and adding value, it's the best we can do, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
And okay, so great. This is awesome. We could talk forever, you know? And so we'll have you back for sure. Couple other questions. I love to learn from mistakes of others, you know, so I don't repeat the same mistake. I typically repeat the same mistakes myself, you know, but others, sometimes I learn better. So okay, I'm new in practice. I want to know your 3 biggest mistakes you made in practice, like going into practice. You would tell a new practitioner.
Okay. Well, I was trying to think about this because you did tell me you were going to ask this question. So I'm like trying to think like, where could I have sped up a learning curve for me? Because I do think in the like school of hard knocks, you're going to learn, you know? So one of the things was that, and I think there's a time and a place for this, but it eventually becomes your demise. It was like my way or the highway to begin with. And so I was much more rigid, and don't get me wrong, that added.
Wait, you need your care, like this is the care. No.
I mean, like in how I was going to grow this practice to a certain level. And it was like, that was like my linear focus, bar none. Right.
Okay.
And that was helpful.
Okay.
But it wasn't a sustainable way to be. And so I burned out relationships from that.
Got it.
And so I think one thing I would tell my younger self or a new practitioner is that there's going to be seasons in building a practice, and you may be in a season where it's like very cutthroat because this is like the one thing that you're doing. But to remember that if you are going to keep this thing going, you're going to need people. You can't alienate everyone in the process of like being so about building a practice. Now, not everyone's that way. Some people need to have more of that, like focus, do the thing.
I did the same thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful.
And so it had to mellow. I had to mellow out on some of that. And what that next lesson was that my practice was actually going to grow better and bigger. The more I realized that the next person joining the team and the next person joining the team was going to think a lot differently than me. And so at first that was really hard for me because I was like, why don't you see it this way? Do it like this. And then I realized that there was a lot of value in the person having a different way that they went through life. And because it obviously also with the people coming into your practice, they don't think like you. And so it helped me learn how to communicate better and also receive new ideas. And I obviously had blind spots. So if I could encourage people that when they have struggles within their team to really look at their own self in the mix and like, maybe there's something really valuable here for me to learn. That doesn't mean that it always means do what the other person wants. It just means it's good to have a well-rounded team. And that was a challenge for me, is I just wanted to be like, nope, you're wrong and do it my way.
Awesome.
Let's see what else. I think another thing that early on I had to realize is that people weren't coming to you to like have you be liked or be their friend. Yes, you'll develop relationships that are friendships on some level, but they want your knowledge and they want you to lead them. And so really taking that position of like, if it was someone I deeply cared about and they went to a chiropractor and that chiropractor didn't tell them some of the things we know and give them an opportunity to follow through on that, like that's on you. And that really stuck with me of like, who would I send my own family to? And then, and why? And then am I doing that in my practice for others?
That's awesome. I remember, Lona, I was in practice about 2 years and Arno came, one of my mentors, Arno Bernier, and he's sitting in my practice for about a day and he goes, you have a personality practice. And I'm like, what does that mean? And he's like, it's like you want to be friends with everyone here. It's not about that. And I realized, there's an extreme on that. And I had to learn all the same lessons you learn, I learn as well. Like, and it's unbelievable because we can repeat the same mistakes if we don't hear this from other people, but these are deep things that you said. So I really appreciate that. Is there any question before we end? Let me just check the time here. Okay, we're good. 30 minutes passed by like this. I like to keep these 30 minutes so people engage and they send questions and comments, and thank you so much. Any question you want to ask me before we end?
Well, I think I would flip that back on you, is especially going through multiple practices now, like if you were speeding up the learning curve, especially for someone opening, what are some things that you like drip as nuggets for them to like go through the process faster?
Okay, actually, thank you. I'm gonna answer this from a perspective. I get messages every day, Lona, of people that want to practice out of the USA, especially with a lot of stuff that's kind of happening now. And so a lot of times I think they think that you're going to go to another country. So a mission trip, I know you've been on mission trips, right? So you go on a mission trip and thousands of people come. It's not like that when you go to open up a practice in another country. It is not a mission trip. So the first thing I want to say is this. I kind of had this fantasy that I was going to go to another country, open up, and just people were going to come running because the chiropractor is here when there's no chiros. I learned the hard way. People literally, Lona, stole money from me. Lawyers stole money from me. they saw this guy is totally clueless, you know? And so I got my ass handed to me in so many ways, you know? And so, you know, you have to understand, if you're going to leave the US and go to another country, it does have massive benefits. You know, you're going to meet people that never heard the word chiropractic, and that's huge. You get to be their first experience of chiropractic. But they're not just going to come running because you open your doors. I actually think it takes more work to open a practice outside of the US where people haven't heard chiropractic. So, you know, you just need to, and there's way more challenges. You know, just to rent an apartment, I needed to have someone sign for my apartment that had a piece of property here. And you don't think about those things, you know? So I actually had to pay someone a ton of money so they would sign for an apartment. So, you know, those aren't things you think about, you know, and those aren't things you understand. And then the labor laws. I remember, Lona, one of the big mistakes, I had a CA, right? And I look at my phone bill, and she's calling like international, and I get my phone bill and it's like $1,000. I'm like, she was calling her boyfriend in England or something. So I fire her on the spot, and she's like, you can't do that. And I'm like, yeah, there's the door. See ya. And I'm thinking it's kind of the same as what I'm used to. And no, you have to, like, here, if you fire someone, you have to pay them for like years and years. So I got taken to court. She was with me like 3 months, and I had to pay her for like 3 years salary. So that was like another huge lesson, you know, to understand those laws and stuff. So I would say the biggest mistakes I made were really moving my life to another country and not having someone kind of guide me in that. I had no one to kind of guide me. So if you are thinking of doing that, definitely find someone to guide you, because those were all my mistakes, had to do with kind of that and being clueless on what that really entailed, you know. And the other mistake, do
you think you would have done it had you known what it would entail?
No. No.
Okay.
If I knew what I was about to go through, there's no way. There's no way. You know, as a matter of fact, Reggie came, who was one of my great mentors, and it was like 3 years maybe in practice. And he's like, what are you doing? You know, come back to the US. And, you know, I think he was kind of testing me, Lona, because like I said to him, Reggie, I'm putting chiropractic on the map where it doesn't exist. And he's like, that was the best answer. You know, if you need any help. And he actually helped me in several different ways from that point. And you know, my family would be constantly questioning me, and you know, but if I knew what I had to go through, I probably wouldn't have done it again. It was the hardest thing of my life, and really, really much harder than I ever imagined. But I would say another mistake that doesn't have to do with that is, the other day, I was thinking about my first talks, and they were like universal intelligence and talking about all this deep stuff in the philosophy. And I remember my CA would say to me, it's so good that no one understands a word you're saying. They just feel your energy, and they think that they want to come here because of that. But what you're saying is so confusing. And so one of the things I learned, Lona, is like to keep, like what Reggie always taught me, keep chiropractic super simple. And it's a process. For example, one of the major things Tom Gilardi always said to me was this: in your talk, your orientation talk, we give an orientation talk, you don't talk about health, because what you're doing is it is literally the biggest religion in the world, modern medicine, you know. And so what we're doing is we're taking people from day one and saying everything you believe is not true, it's a lie, right? And so instead of embracing them, we're like pushing them away and saying what you believe is a lie. First, get them in for chiropractic care, you know. So I stopped talking about health, and I don't even use the word health in my practice. It's all about life and the principles. That was a big lesson too, Lona, because once I removed that whole thing about health and just made it about life, it's like I wasn't making people wrong. And then teaching them the principles, I realized they started thinking different over time.
Love that.
So Okay, so thank you. I want to give Lona the last word here. So anything you want to say to anyone watching?
I don't know. I love when you get going on something, because you are probably the best chiropractic communicator that, I can listen to. So, no, it was great. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to have you back. Thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for your comments, questions. Lona, where can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you? Also, question, are you looking for associates? Like, are you always open for looking for associates?
Yeah.
Okay. So
we have a project that we're expanding. So please find me if you're looking to move to the Midwest. And additionally, reach out on Facebook, Instagram, or my website is drlonacook.com.
Okay, super. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.